الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد, today which is the 12th of Ramadan, the 28th of May 2018, the 12th of Ramadan, just saying that should make us realize how fast these days have actually gone. SubhanAllah, yesterday we were talking about Ramadan beginning. We have already finished the first 10 days of Ramadan. We're already in the second day of the middle 10 days of Ramadan. And as you all know, we're eagerly awaiting for the last 10 nights of Ramadan. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us with these opportunities to develop a pattern, develop a habit, so that when the last 10 nights come, we are able to give it our all. And this is important for us to understand. Right now, these second, if you want to call them the second 10 days of Ramadan, the middle 10 days of Ramadan, this is not a time to slow down. And I want you to recognize this, because so many people during this period of Ramadan, they let their foot off the gas, if you will. You know, it's like they slow down, they coast. They're not pushing themselves anymore. As you know, when Ramadan started, people start off with enthusiasm. And our Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith, he says, "Inna likulli amalin shirra." For every action, there's a period of enthusiasm, right? So there's this time when you're pushing yourself, you're striving, you're doing everything you said that you were going to do before Ramadan. Reading the Quran every day, you're reading some tafsir, you're making dua, you're praying in jama'ah, you're praying qiyam al-layl to the end of it. And then the middle 10 days come, and a lot of people slow it down. They don't have that same kind of enthusiasm. And the Prophet ﷺ explained to us, وَلِكُلِّ شِرَّةٍ فَتْرَةٍ. For every period of enthusiasm, there's a period where you kind of coast, maybe even get lethargic. And you stop doing the things that you said that you wanted to do before Ramadan. And you need to, this is not for anyone except for you and for me, to look at, wait a minute, am I actually accomplishing the goals that I set forth for myself at the beginning of Ramadan? It's the 12th day now. You can take a look and you can see a pattern developing. Yes, I started out great. First day, second day, third day. I began to fall off. I came back. Now I'm coasting. No, this is not time to coast. It's time to push it up a little bit. In preparation for the last 10 nights of Ramadan. We only have a week left. We'll have a week left, and then we'll be facing the last 10 nights of Ramadan. In those nights, it's a night that is better than alf shahr, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. There's a night that's better than 1,000 months. And we're not going to get that night if we don't strive. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't open up His gates of mercy for us. So we have to push ourselves, even now. And as Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah ta'ala said, "Ya bana Adam, innama anta ayyam." Oh, son of Adam, you're nothing but days. And if you think about your life, what it really means, when you stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's not going to be the wealth that you acquire. It's not going to be the riches that you've had of life, or your education even, or any of those things. It's going to be your deeds. And those deeds are done in time periods. فَإِنَّمَا أَنْتَ أَيَّامٌ. You're nothing but days. إِذَا ذَهَبَ يَوْمٌ ذَهَبَ بَعْضُ. Every day that goes by is a part of you that leaves. You can't get it back. It's not going to come back. And so it's very important that we take advantage of our time. We take advantage of our time. As the Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith, to finish it up, he said, فَمَنْ كَانَتْ فَتْرَتُهُ إِلَى سُنَّتِي فَقَدْ اهْتَدَى. Whose ever period of coasting, of lack of enthusiasm, is to my sunnah. In other words, he still doesn't go off the path. He still stays moderate in that course of emulating our Prophet ﷺ, then he will be guided. And so it's important that even during the times where we may not feel the same energy that we feel in other days, you have good days and you have bad days. Or you have good days and you have days that are not so good. But on those days, you still have to stay focused. Make your intentions be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Don't totally leave off something. Don't totally leave off the good deeds that you're doing. You may find a day, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you. You're feeling enthusiastic and energetic and you read 3 juz of Quran, 4 juz of Quran. The next day, you may not have the same amount of time. You may not have the same amount of enthusiasm. But don't fall all the way off. Still read half a juz or whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes easy for you. Before getting into today's lesson, I want to focus on something, and inshallah we'll be focused on this daily before the lessons. That is the importance of prophetic dua. What I mean by prophetic dua, we all make dua. We all pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we're in sajda, we may ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the things that we want before tashahhud and so on. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the day. We make dua to Allah azza wa jalla. But the prophetic dua is the dua that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself used to make to Allah. And many of those have been recorded. And there's nobody who called upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who is better than the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. There was nobody who asked for anything better than the way that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam asked. And so if we can learn the du'as that the Prophet ﷺ himself used to make, and when I say learn them, I'm not just talking about on the tongue, but I'm talking about we actually know what they mean. And then we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for those things. This is going to be better for us than any du'a that we may make up in our minds. And on that note, for those of you who have made Umrah, or who will be making the Umrah, when you're going around for Tawaf, have you ever heard somebody who's leading a group of people behind them, and they're making dua, and the people behind them are also making dua? Just 1 second. So, as you're going around the Kaaba, and you hear, when you hear people as they're going around the Kaaba, and they say Allahumma, and then the people behind them, Allahumma, la tada'nana dhanban, la tada'nana dhanban, right? Okay. If you're trying to make dua at the same time for yourself, can you concentrate when this person is next to you screaming? It's very difficult. It's very difficult for you to concentrate when somebody else is next to you screaming, Allahumma, Allahumma, and everybody, and you're trying to make your own dua. So there's a few problems with this, and I want to mention it, not because any of you have ever done this, but hopefully so that this message can spread, because this is one of the clear mistakes that are being made around the Kaaba on a daily basis, every hour, probably every minute. And it's something that needs to be corrected. And so if you know people who do it, correct them. If you see people doing it, talk to them, ask them to lower their voice, because it is incorrect for the following reasons. Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'u rabbakum tadarru'an wa khufya." Call upon your Lord with humility and discreetly. Khufyatan. To raise your voice in dua it goes against the rule. It goes against the rule. And the Prophet ﷺ heard some of his companions who were making dhikr very loudly, and the Prophet ﷺ said that you are not calling upon one who is deaf. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as-sami'. He hears you. There's no reason for you to be screaming. And so when you're going around the Kaaba, the way that the etiquettes that you should have in calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that you keep your voice low. It's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that you only think about it. No, you should be saying it off of your tongue, Put it in a voice that is not going to distract or disturb anybody who's around. They shouldn't hear what you're saying. So that's number one. The second thing is that our Prophet ﷺ said, Allah does not accept the dua that comes from a neglectful heart, a heart that is unattentive. In other words, these people, many times, who are making dua, and this is frequent amongst non-Arab speakers, they don't even know what they're saying. The person in front of them is just telling them what to say, but they don't actually know what they're saying. They're just repeating what's being said. And if you don't know what you're saying, it's very difficult for that to be a sincere dua, because you don't even, what is prayer? What is dua? You're asking Allah for something. How are you making dua if you don't know what you're asking for? You understand? It's contradictory. It's not really dua. It's just you're repeating like any parrot could do, except that you're a human being. But your actions are the actions of a parrot. And so here, this is also ineffective when it comes to calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's going to be much better for a person who's going around the Kaaba to make dua for themselves with whatever is easy for them in their own language than to repeat after somebody and they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're saying. The third thing is that, and we'll stop at this point when it comes to this. The third thing is that it is extremely disturbing to the other people who are trying to make dua. And to disturb people from ibadah is sinful. And our Prophet ﷺ prohibited you from reading the Quran in a loud voice if it's going to distract the musalli. It's going to distract the people that are praying. This comes in a hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud. So, if you are not supposed to raise your voice in a manner that is going to distract the other believers from their worship in the masjid, and you are in the masjid when you're making tawaf as well, then you need to be careful about that. You need to be careful about distracting and disturbing the believers as they are also trying to make tawaf and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So here we have three things. We'll go over them again. Number one is that it is from the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we call upon Him with humility and discreetly. That's number one. Number two is that you are, when calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you know what you are saying. And number three, that you avoid distracting the believers. So back to our point of dua, because Ramadan is a month of fasting, and it is a month of dua. It's a month that we should be striving to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than we do on normal occasions. And every time is a time for dua. But specifically during the month of Ramadan, if you look at those ayat, how many places did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about Ramadan in the Quran? How many places? You've been reading the Quran this month. How many times have you come across Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talking about Ramadan? Only once. Only once does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about the month of Ramadan, and that's in Surah Al-Baqarah. And there are 4 ayats that talk about Ramadan. In the middle of those ayats, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. Allah says, if my servants ask you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, about me, say I am close, I am near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. I respond and I answer the prayers of those who call upon me when they petition me, when they pray to me. I answer their prayers. So Ramadan is a month of dua. It's a month that we should do what? That we should train ourselves to make more dua. And so at the beginning of our lessons, inshallah ta'ala, every day for the remainder of this month, we're going to start with dua. We are going to memorize, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, some prophetic du'as that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make and it used to encourage us to make, with the hope that, inshallah, Ramadan doesn't end except that you have memorized 2, 3, 4, 5 more du'as than you used to know, and that for the rest of your life, you make these du'as. That you incorporate these du'as in your life, that you know what they mean, that you ponder over the meanings of what you're really asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. And then you strive for whatever it is that you ask Allah for. Not that you sit there and you wait for it to come to you, but that you strive. So, the first dua that we're going to cover today, we're not going to cover all of it. I want you to listen to it. I'm going to translate it. I'm going to talk about the first part of this dua, and you're going to memorize the first part of this dua. Bi'idhnillah, we're going to memorize it together. And then, bi'idhnillah, for the rest of your life, you can remember that it was the Ramadan of 1439, Ramadan of 2018, that you memorized these du'as and you've been saying them since. And don't let another Ramadan come around, except that you do the same thing. That you memorize more du'as with the Prophet ﷺ, because our Prophet said, du'a huwa al-ibad. Du'a is the worship. It is the best form of worship. It is the essence of your worship. It is your connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you call upon Him, and that you show Him that you are broken in front of Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are in need, and that He is the one that can give you subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the dua that we're going to cover today is collected in the Saheeh of Imam Muslim, rahimahullah ta'ala, on the authority of Abu Hurairah, radiyallahu ta'ala, who said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to make the following dua. He would say, Allahumma aslihli, and please, especially for Westerners, get out of the habit of saying Allahumma. This is a Western phenomenon. It's Allah. You're calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you say Allahumma, Allahumma, like aslih li dini alladhi huwa ismatu amri. That's the first part of the dua. Allahumma aslih li dini alladhi huwa ismatu amri. What are you asking Allah for here? You're saying, oh Allah, aslih, correct, set right, fix for me my deen. Make my deen right. Make my practice of Islam correct. Allahumma aslih li dini. And then you say, alladhi huwa ismatu amri, which is the safeguard of all my affairs. Everything you do in your life is protected by your practice of the deen. It should revolve around your deen. So this is the first part of the hadith. I'm going to mention the rest of the hadith, translate it, and then we'll go back and explain the importance of this part of the hadith. So the hadith is, Allahumma aslih li dini alladhi huwa ismatu amri, wa aslih li dunyaya allati fiha ma'ashi, wa aslih li akhirati allati ilayha ma'adi, waj'al al-hayata ziyadatan li fi kulli khayr, وَجَعَلِ الْمَوْتَ رَاحَةً لِي مِنْ كُلِّ شَرٍ. So there are 5 things that you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for in this hadith. The first is that He make islah of your deen, that He correct your deen, which is the safeguard of all your affairs. And then you ask Allah to make islah of your life in which you are living, meaning your dunya in which you live. Oh Allah, set this right for me. Make it right. Fix it. If there's anything broken about my dunya, then make it right for me. Because this is where I have to live. And fix for me, set right for me, mend for me my hereafter. الَّذِي إِلَيْهَا مَعَادِ, or الَّتِي إِلَيْهَا مَعَادِ, which I will return to, or which is going to be my final abode. Right, so what's the first thing that you ask Allah to fix for you? Your deen. Second thing, your dunya. The third thing, your hereafter. Right? And then you say, وَجَعَلَ الْحَيَاةَ زِيَادَةً لِي فِي كُلِّ خَيْرٍ, and make this life an increase for me in all that is good. Oh Allah, make this life for me an increase in all that is good. وَالْمَوْتَ رَاحَةً لِي مِنْ كُلِّ شَرٍ, and make death make my death be a relaxation. That's not the right term. But allow it to relieve me of every evil and every harm. Allow death to be a relief for me from every harm. So you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 5 things in this dua. And again, this dua is considered to be from amongst the comprehensive. When the scholars write books of adhkar and dua, a lot of times they break those down. Adhkar al-sabah al-masad, those dua and adhkar that you make in the morning and in the evening. And then they have a section that is for comprehensive dua. That is dua that covers everything. This is one of those du'as that the Prophet ﷺ used to make that covers everything. There's nothing that's left out in this dua. So we're going to focus on number 1 for today. How many things are there that you're asking for? 5. Exactly. Good. Right. So there are 5 things that you're asking for. We're going to focus on the first one because it is the most important. And that is Allahumma aslih li dini. I want you to repeat after me. Allahumma aslih li dini. Okay. So there's only 3 things that you're saying there. Allahumma aslih li dini. Okay. Allahumma aslih li dini. Allahumma aslih li dini. Alright. So what does this mean? Oh Allah, set right my religion. Now that terminology, we don't really use that in English. That's why I switched over to fix. Because sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes things go wrong in your understanding of the religion. Sometimes things go wrong in your practice of the religion. Sometimes the Prophet ﷺ didn't used to turn down a tea and being perfumed. Sometimes things go wrong in your understanding or your practice or your belief. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fix all of that for you, to make it right. Why? Because your need is ismatu amri. It's the thing that keeps all of my affairs together. It keeps everything right. Brothers in Islam, know for a certainty that you have no commodity. You have nothing that is more valuable to you than your deen. You could lose everything and have your deen and you'll be fine. And you could have everything and lose your deen and you will not be okay. And when I say everything, I mean from material and these type of things. It's not going to make you okay. And subhanAllah, why do you think that there are people who have a lot of worldly possessions and they're still not happy? I mean, the epitome of that is that some of them would commit suicide, right? But not everybody commits suicide that's not happy. But they still live an unhappy life. They have a lot of money, but they still have to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist every week. Why? Because they're depressed. But they have everything, or they think they do. But if you don't have deen, then your life loses its focus. When you have deen, you live a life of dignity, you live a life of honor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you focus in life. It allows you to prioritize. It allows you to see the world through a lens that many people don't get to see this world through. It allows you to see things for what they really are. Allah Azza wa Jalla, when describing those who do not follow this deen, and those who are basically what we would call dahriyun, or atheists, they believe in time, they believe in the eternalness of, matter and energy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about them, يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. They know what is superficial about this life. But when it comes to the hereafter, they're heedless. And subhanAllah, what does it mean for a person to go through this whole life, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, only to die and then face the reality of the hereafter. SubhanAllah. Because they thought that everything was based on this life. And so this life to them is not a preparation for something to come. It is the be-all, end-all. يَعْلَمُونَ ظَاهِرًا مِنَ الْحَيَاةِ. SubhanAllah. It's similar to a person who goes to school just to say that they attended. You go to school for what? Other people went to school because they recognized that high school was a bridge to college, which was a bridge to a career, which was a bridge to building a family, and so on. This person had no idea of these realities. So they went to school and then what? They went to sleep, they got marked present, fine, whatever. But they didn't learn. Maybe they didn't even get a certificate at the end. Because they weren't able to pass their classes. Because for them, the ultimate goal was just to be there. And this is what happens to so many people who don't believe in a hereafter. Their goal is just to live this life. Whatever makes them happy. So they say. Even though many of them never achieve happiness, and they can never achieve true happiness without their hearts being attached to the one that created them. Though they may placate themselves through whatever means that they use, whether it's entertainment, whether it's drugs, whether it's social activism, which is a good thing, but they use that so they don't have to think about other things. It becomes their drug. It becomes their drug. So that they can forget that they feel that gaping hole that they have inside of their chest because they're not attached to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So your deen is the most valuable thing that you have. And because it gives you that honor, because it makes you principled, there are people who do not want you to have a deen. Because when you are a slave to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you won't be a slave to them. And they need you to be a slave to them. They need you to be a cog in whatever system or wheel that they've got going on, so that you can serve their interests, and so that you can serve the interests of whatever ism it is that they're pushing at that time. Whether it's capitalism or socialism or communism or nationalism or secularism or whatever other ism they have going on. If you have real deen and you have real attachment to your creator, you won't be a slave to that system. And that's not beneficial to them. And so they want to strip you of the thing that gives you your very honor so that you can be reprogrammed by them so that you work for their system. It's not that they want to free you. They do it in the name of freedom, in the name of democracy, in the name of all of these things. So that because you, poor Muslim, are oppressed by your religion. And so we're here to come and free you, really. As a Muslim, the ultimate freedom is in my servitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is my ultimate freedom. But they want to strip you and me of that in the name of freedom so that I can be reprogrammed and become a part of their system. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make right for us our deen. Because it is the ismah, as the Prophet ﷺ said, it is that safeguard of all of our affairs. And when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to safeguard or to set right for us our deen, what we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, two main things. Because this is when your deen will be right. We're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for sincerity. When you say, Allahumma aslih li deen, alladhi huwa ismatu amri, oh Allah, set right for me my deen, that is the safeguard of all of my affairs, you're asking Allah to grant you ikhlas. You're asking Allah for sincerity, that everything you do in your deen is for Him and for Him alone, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That none of that goes to any other human being, no matter who they may be, Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu used to make a dua. He would say, Allahumma ja'al amali kullahu salihah. Oh Allah, make all of my deeds righteous. Make all of my actions righteous. وَلِوَجْهِكَ خَالِصًا. And make those deeds sincerely seeking your face. And no one else. وَلَا تَجْعَلْ لِأَحَدٍ فِيهَا شَيْئًا or فِيهِ شَيْئًا. And don't give any of it to anyone else. Don't make any of it be for anyone else. So when you're asking Allah to set right your deed, you are asking Him for sincerity, and you're asking Him for both the knowledge and the will to emulate the teachings of our Prophet ﷺ. That is how your deen becomes right. Because nobody practiced the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal like our Prophet ﷺ. And we as Muslims have to know what his sunnah is so that we can then follow his sunnah ﷺ. By doing those two things, our deen will be right because we'll be doing it as the Prophet ﷺ did it. We'll be doing it the way that his companions followed him. So this is what you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Are we clear on the importance of our deen and what it means for our deen to be set right? Because there may be things that we are doing right now that are not in accordance to the teachings of our Prophet ﷺ. There may be things that we believe right now. There may be notions that we have that don't coincide with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed. And so when we ask Allah to set right for us our deen, we're asking Him subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that knowledge and that willpower to, number one, be sincere to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, and number two, to follow revelation. Whether that revelation is in the Quran or in the Sunnah of our Messenger, alayhi salatu wasalam. So here, this is the first part of this dua. What are we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for in this dua? How many things? 5 things. The first of those things is that He corrects for us and sets right for us our deen. We'll cover the next 2 tomorrow, inshallah, and then the following 2 on Wednesday. So it'll take us 3 days to cover this dua. The first part of the dua is Allahumma, repeat after me, Allahumma aslih li dini alladhi huwa ismatu amri. That's it. Allahumma aslih li dini alladhi huwa ismatu amri. And I believe this hadith, Allahu a'lam, I believe it's in Hereafter Muslim. If you know that small book on dua called Hereafter Muslim, I believe it's in Hereafter Muslim. And inshallah ta'ala, I'll try to find it and give you the number tomorrow so that you can look at it and follow up with it, inshallah ta'ala. The meaning again of that part of the dua is, oh Allah set right for me my religion, which is the safeguard and the protection for all of my affairs. Like, we're going to move on to our study, which is the book of tawheed. And we have made it to the 6th chapter in the book of tawheed. And again, as we study dua, like we just talked about dua, that dua is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. If someone was to call upon other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that would be the opposite of what we're doing. What we're doing is tawheed. It's that worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, calling upon Him alone. If someone was to call upon other than Allah, then they would now be taking an act of worship that has to be specifically for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making that act of worship for someone else. And once you do not single out Allah, which that's called tawheed, to single out Allah, if you assign a partner to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that linguistically and from a religious perspective is called shirk. The same way that your partner is called a sharik. So it's from the same root. And a company is called a sharika. Okay, because in general with companies, there are multiple partners at the top. There are multiple partners at the head. Okay, so we are now covering the book of Tawheed, the 6th chapter, which is entitled Tafsir Tawheed wa Shahadah and La ilaha illallah. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, gives us the title, which is to clarify, to explain tawheed and la ilaha illallah. And la ilaha illallah. So in this chapter, even though we've covered some aspects of tawheed, the author wants to come now and talk specifically about tawheed al-ibadah, or what is called tawheed al-qasd wa talab, which is the tawheed of the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that only Allah has the right to be worshipped. Now, what happens a lot of times is that people are not conscious that worship is not simply bowing to a statue. You're not going to find, inshallah, you won't find many Muslims or people who say that they are Muslim who make sajda to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? You're not going to find too many Muslims bow to other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's also important because now, for example, and this is also, critical for us to understand. As some of the scholars of Islam have said, like Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, tawheed, he says, is a ma'danun latif, which can be literally translated as a delicate mineral, or we can say a precious metal. Tawheed is a precious metal, which can be scratched by almost anything. Now pay attention to that. Precious metals, what happens when they get scratched? They lose their value. They get blemished. And tawheed is the most valuable aspect of your Islam. That's what Islam is predicated upon. Because Islam is built upon the shahadah, that you testify to la ilaha illallah, which is a testimony of tawheed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the only one that has the right to be worshipped. That precious metal may be scratched by almost anything, which is why the Prophet ﷺ was very cautious even about words. And we're going to cover that. You know that man that came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, "Ma sha'Allahu wa shit." What Allah wills and what you will. What Allah wills and what you will. Play it. Is there something wrong with that statement? Basically, the man is saying, well, whatever Allah wills and whatever you will. Why would he say something like that? Because human beings have a will. Don't you have a will? You have a will. If you want to stand up right now, you stand up. You want to sit down, you sit down. If I tell you to close your eyes and you want to, you'll close your eyes. If I tell you to open them and you want to, you open them. You have a will. Correct? So you have a mashiach. You have a will. Okay. That will, of course, is not a totally independent will. The only one who has a totally independent will is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why Allah says about us, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. But you do not will unless Allah wills. In other words, you can only do that because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the ability and allowed you. So if I told you to stand up, and you said, okay, I'm going to stand up, but then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if something happened, you had a little pain in your leg or something like that, you couldn't stand up, then Allah did not will for you to stand. So even though you have a will, your will is secondary, right? It follows, and it is not a totally independent will. Rather, it is dependent upon the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when that man says to the Prophet ﷺ, "Ma sha'Allah wa shit," what Allah wills and what you will, the Prophet ﷺ didn't let that slide. And he said to him, "Aj'altani lillahi niddan?" Have you made me a rival with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Have you made me equal with Allah? قُلْ مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ ثُمَّ شِئْتَ or مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ وَحْدَهُ. Say what Allah wills alone. What Allah alone wills. That's what's going to happen. Or what Allah wills and then what you will. Not on the same level. Don't make me equal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this man obviously had no intention of making the Prophet ﷺ an equal with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That wasn't his intention. But the words themselves were enough to scratch the tawheed. And so the Prophet ﷺ didn't let it slide. And so this is why it's so important for us to understand tawheed. And if you look at it following the previous chapter was what? The call to tawheed. Right? In other words, we have learned the virtues of tawheed, we know what it means to excel in tawheed, and now you need to call to a tawheed. Right? That's the 5th chapter. The 6th chapter is explaining tawheed. Not that it hasn't been explained already, but going into a little bit more detail, because once you call to tawheed, you need to be very clear. There needs to be no ambiguity left about what it is, what the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are, and what a tawheed means. And so the author here is clarifying tawheed and the shahadah of la ilaha illallah, the testimony that there is no true deity except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like in this chapter, we're going to cover 4 ayahs and 1 hadith. The author himself says nothing. And why is that important? Because he wants to show us that the explanation of tawheed and the explanation of la ilaha illallah is found in the Quran and the Sunnah. You don't need a person, some random scholar, to come tell you what la ilaha illallah means. La ilaha illallah is described fully in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so there are 4 ayahs and 1 hadith that we're going to cover. The first ayah, and I want you to pay attention to the ayah. Do any of you have masahif on your phones? You have a mushaf on your phone? No? You don't have an app, like a Quran app on your phone? If you do, pull out your phone. Go to Surah Al-Isra, which is the 17th chapter in the Quran. And you want to go to the 56th ayah and the 57th ayah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, قُلْ إِدُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ مِن دُونِهِ فَلَا يَمْلِكُونَ كَشْفَ الضُّرِّ عَنْكُمْ وَلَا تَحْوِيلًا قُلْ إِدُوا الَّذِينَ زَعَمْتُمْ مِن دُونِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here is challenging the mushrikun. He says, call upon those whom you claim can answer your calls besides him, meaning besides Allah. Okay. Then he says, فَلَا يَمْلِكُونَ كَشْفَ الضُّرِّ عَنْكُمْ وَلَا تَحْوِيلًا. They don't have the ability to remove any affliction that has befallen you, nor do they have the ability to transfer it to anyone or anything else. Now, what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showing us here? He's showing us that it is only Him subhanahu wa ta'ala that has the ability to remove harm that has befallen you, or to prevent it from coming to you. You understand this point here? So here, Allah is negating that anyone else has the ability to do that. They don't have the ability, they don't have the power to to remove any harm that has come to you or to transfer it. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says from there. So remember what we said about tawheed? Remember that we said to single out anything, you have to affirm something and you have to negate something. You remember that? It's important that these concepts stay with us. If I want to say that Zayd is standing and I want to make tawheed of this statement, then I have to say that Zayd is the only one standing. Or Zayd is standing and nothing or no one else is. I have to have both. If I just say Zayd is standing, then I can also say Khalid is standing and Amr is standing. There's no singling out here. So for tawheed, we have to have both affirmation and negation. Here in this ayah, Allah negates that any deities have the ability to do these things. Any of the gods that they call upon. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ يَبْتَغُونَ إِلَىٰ رَبِّهِمُ الْوَسِيلَةَ أَيُّهُمْ أَقْرَبُ وَيَرْجُونَ رَحْمَتَهُ وَيَخَافُونَ عَذَابَهُ إِنَّ عَذَابَ رَبِّكَ كَانَ مَحْذُورًا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say in these ayahs, those. What are you talking about, those? When you read the Quran, pay attention to the pronouns. When you read the Sunnah of the Prophet, pay attention to the pronouns. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says those, meaning those that you have called upon. Besides Allah, they call upon, they themselves are seeking means of access to Allah. Okay, let's look at this. The Christians, besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they call upon who? They call upon Jesus. And they say, like, their call to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Allah is saying, Isa does not have the ability to lift or remove any harm that has befallen you. In fact, he himself, he and those whom you call upon besides Allah, they themselves are seeking to draw closer to Allah. They themselves are seeking to draw closer to Allah. That's a deep concept, because now the same one that you are making dua to, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is shirk, that same one that you are calling upon, he is calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So his act is tawheed, and your act is not yours, but their act is shirk. If they are calling upon angels, the angels are calling upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah is clarifying here that those ones that you are calling upon, they themselves, they are trying to get closer to Allah. It is their desire to draw closer, to draw nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Which of them is closer? And they hope in His mercy. And they fear His punishment. Like, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about those who are calling upon Him here? He says that they love Him, and that they fear Him, and that they hope in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are what are known as arkanul ibadah. These are the three essential elements, or pillars, if you will, of worship. That you love Allah, and that is the most important, and we'll cover that a little later in the chapter, inshallah. That you hope in Allah, that you hope in His mercy, and that you fear His punishment. These three are the pillars of your worship. They are the essential matters in worship. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala affirms here that He alone is the one that should be called on. That if we're going to invoke anyone, that we invoke Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And that all of the deities besides Him are to be shunned. And that this is the meaning of tawheed. The meaning of tawheed, therefore, we look just at this verse, or these two verses in Surah Al-Isra. What is the meaning of tawheed? It is to worship Allah and to reject the worship of other than Allah. To worship Allah, to reject the worship of other than Allah. Clear? That is what tawheed is like. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also says, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ لِأَبِيهِ وَقَوْمِهِ إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ مِّمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي فإنه سيهدين وجعلها كلمة باقية في عقبه لعلهم يرجعون. Like, the point that we want to cover in this ayah is when Ibrahim said to his father and to his people, إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ مِّمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ. I am completely innocent of, I disassociate myself from everything that you worship. Okay. The people of Ibrahim, what did they worship? Did they worship Isa alayhi salatu wasalam? Huh? No? Why not? Why did they worship Jesus? Because what? Because he wasn't born yet. Exactly. Okay. He wasn't born yet. Like, what did they worship? When Ibrahim had the argument, or the debate, if you will, with his father and his people, he debated them about what? Star, the moon, the sun. What did they used to worship? They used to worship celestial beings, stars, planets, any celestial beings they used to worship. And the people of Noah, what did they used to worship? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what was going on at the time when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent Noah to his people? What did they begin to worship? Huh? They began to worship idols that represented what? That represented the dead, the deceased. So they were worshiping idols that to them represented the pious people that came before. The people of Ibrahim, they were worshiping the stars, celestial beings, which they also believed were representative of the Creator's power. That's it. Like, so the point here is that what? Ibrahim said, I am bara. I have disassociated myself, I'm free, I'm innocent of all of those things that you worship. But did he stop there? He said, إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي. Because they also, along with the stars, what else did they worship? They worshiped Allah. You see, and this is the point that a lot of us don't fully digest. Even with the mushrikun at the time of the Prophet, they worshipped Allah. That wasn't the problem. The problem is they didn't worship Allah alone. They didn't only worship Allah. It wasn't that they didn't worship Allah. They recognized Allah as being the Creator. If you ask them who created the heavens and the earth, they would say Allah. So it wasn't that they didn't recognize Allah as being a creator, a sustainer, and it wasn't that they didn't worship Him. It wasn't the problem. The reason why they rejected the message of Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is that he called them to worship Allah alone. Alone. أَجَعَلَ الْآلِهَةَ إِلَهًا وَاحِدًا إِنَّ هَذَا لَشَيْءٌ عُجَابٌ. Is he trying to say that all of the deities, that all of what we worship should be only one? Should be only one? This is something that is strange. So this is why they rejected his call. And this is why we know for a certainty that La ilaha illallah, that the proper interpretation of that is not that there's only one creator, or that Allah is the only creator. Yes, that's a true statement. But that is not the translation, that is not the interpretation of La ilaha illallah. If that was the interpretation of La ilaha illallah, they would have been the first people to become Muslim and to bear witness to that. So to rewind, Ibrahim says to his folks, إِنَّنِي بَرَاءٌ مِّمَّا تَعْبُدُونَ. I am totally disassociated from, innocent of everything that you worship. But because they worship Allah, he said, except for إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي, except for the one who originated me, except for the one who created me, فَإِنَّهُ سَيَهْدِينِ, because he will guide me. And so Ibrahim here, what do we have again for tawheed? We have negation. I don't worship any of that. إِلَّا الَّذِي فَطَرَنِي. La ilaha illallah. I reject all of these deities except for Allah. And we also hear there's a subtle indication, and this is also in previous books, previous revelations, that the one who deserves to be worshipped is the one who created. No one else, no matter what level they reach, no matter how pious of an angel they may be, Jibril alayhi salatu wasalam, or even if they are the best of the messengers, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, even if you are the most noble of prophets, you don't deserve to be what? Worshipped. And our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said as much as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in the Quran, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. Say that I am only a person like you are. A person is not to be what? Worshipped. You had later. But I received revelation, and if he receives revelation, he's not to be disobeyed. It's to be followed. So that is the balance that we strike when it comes to our Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. So the meaning of tawheed, as we get in this verse, is that what? Rejection of false deities, affirmation of worshiping Allah, the Creator alone. We see a pattern here. Pattern for tawheed. Like the next ayah. This is number 3. We said there are 4 ayahs, 1 hadith. The third one. And this one is important. This one is extremely important because there's a subtle point here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, اتَّخَذُوا أَحْبَارَهُمْ وَرَهْبَانَهُمْ أَرْبَابًا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ. Allah says they took their ahbab and their ruhban, which is their scholars and their worshippers. Many of the translators say their rabbis and their monks. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the people of the book. So they take their rabbis and their monks as arbab. Arbab is the plural of rabb. And what do we normally translate Rabb as? A Lord, Master. Okay? So your Rabb is the one who has created you and sustained you, who manages your affairs. So this verse, Allah says they take their rabbis and their monks as lords besides Allah. There's a hadith in Sunan al-Tirmidhi, and Tirmidhi himself rated it as Hasan, and some of the other scholars of hadith as well, like Ibn Taymiyyah. In this hadith, Adi ibn Hatim, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who used to be from the people of the book, before he took shahadah, he said, Ya Rasulullah, lasna na'budu. Oh Messenger of Allah, we didn't used to worship them. He heard this ayah. اتخذوا أحبارهم ورهبانهم أربابا من دون الله. They've taken their monks and priests, or monks and rabbis as lords besides Allah, min dun illah, besides Allah. He said, no, we didn't used to worship them. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, did they not used to make halal, make permissible what Allah has forbidden, and forbid what Allah has made halal, and follow them in that? And he said, yes, O Messenger of Allah. He said, فَتِلْكَ عِبَادَتُهُمْ. This is worshiping them. This is worshiping them. And here is a stern warning for any Muslim who puts any human being at the level of a tashri', that is, that they have the right to determine what is halal and what is haram besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No human being can come down. It doesn't matter how pious they are, what madhab they may follow. They may be the greatest sheikh on planet Earth. They do not have the ability, they do not have the permission to be followed and making permissible what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made haram, or making haram what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made halal. This is why a person can't go to extreme in the love of or the following of any of his sheikhs. Because these are the same thing. The rabbis are the sheikhs of the Jews, and the priests are the sheikhs of the Christians. We can't go to that level now where we look at them as being infallible and that what they say becomes revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it has to be measured, engaged with revelation. Book of Allah, the Sunnah of His Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. If anyone does that, now, if someone is told by their superior in knowledge to do something that they believe to be haram, and they still do it, but they believe it's haram, that doesn't take them outside of the fold of Islam. That's not worshiping them besides Allah. It takes the ruling of the other sins that a person may commit, not to the level of shirk. But if a person follows them, knowing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this thing haram, and then they follow them in making it halal, they believe now that it is halal because they shaykh said so. And this is the same level of shirk that the people of the book were applying with their rabbis and their monks and their priests. And so part of tawheed, and this is what the author is getting at here, because he's explaining to us that tawheed, not leaving it as something that is theoretical, but now explaining. Part of that tawheed is what? That Allah Azza wa Jal has the sole right to determine halal and haram. And what do we say tawheed is? Linguistically is to what? Single something out. So when you single out Allah Azza wa Jal as the one who has the sole right to determine halal and haram, then that is at-tawheed. And to give that right to other than him becomes shirk. And we're going to study this further, inshallah ta'ala, in a later chapter. I believe it's chapter 38. There's a chapter dedicated specifically to this ayah, in this topic. The last ayah that we're going to cover, which is also an explanation of tawheed, is a statement of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَندَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. From amongst the people, there are those who assign equals to Allah, assign rivals to Allah. They love them the way that they love Allah. They love them the way that they love Allah. يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ. They love them the way that they love Allah. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. But those who believe love Allah even more. Those who believe love Allah even more. Like, that's the part of the ayah that the author wants to focus on. Like, here, what do we have? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is describing those who love Him, but who love others the way that they love Him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls them, He then says, وَلَوْ يَرَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا إِذْ يَرَوْنَ الْعَذَابَ أَنَّ الْقُوَّةَ لِلَّهِ جَمِيعًا. He calls them those who have ظَلَمُوا, those who have done injustice, if they would only see the punishment. Like, why are they, and what did we say before, what is the worst form of injustice? Is to give to other than Allah that which should be for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So what is it here? They love others the way that they love Allah. That is called what? Shirk. That's called shirk. وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. But those who believe love Allah even more. They love Allah more than those love their deities, and they love them more than they love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They love Allah more. And that is called at-tawheed. Love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Singling Him out as the object of your love, such that you what? That you make all of your deeds sincere to Him, such that all of your worship is for Him and Him alone. That is the essence of tawheed. That is the essence of tawheed. And for that reason, what did we say are the three arkan of ibadah? The three essential elements of worship are what? Yeah. Speak up. Loving Him, fearing Him, and hoping in Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's the essence of tawheed, it has no limit. There's no such thing as loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala too much. The other two, and this is where love is different from fear and hope, the others do have limits. As Ibn Rajab rahimahullah ta'ala mentions. There is a point where fear has to stop. Where your fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if it goes too far, it becomes unhealthy. And that's when you get to the point where you despair from Allah's mercy. Because you've done wrong, you fear so much that you despair from Allah's mercy. This is haram. Matter of fact, despairing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy is min kaba'ir al-dhunub. It is from the major sins. So there is theoretically, and in fact practically, is a limit to healthy fear. It goes beyond that, it becomes haram. Same thing with hope. Hope has a limit. If you go beyond that limit, now you feel secure from Allah's punishment. Because of your hope. When it gets to that level, the hope is no longer healthy. So hope and fear have limits. The love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no limit whatsoever. You cannot love Allah too much. It's impossible. And it is the basis of your tawheed. When you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way that you are supposed to, you are going to worship Him subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. You are going to find in your heart the desire to comply with His commands. The Prophet ﷺ was instructed in the Quran to say, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبُكُمُ اللَّهُ. Say, this is the Prophet ﷺ saying to the Sahaba, if you really love Allah, you claim, this is your claim, to love Allah, then follow me. So look, here's the thing. And this is something I want you to teach the people that you go back to. To say that you love Allah is not enough. A claim off the tongue. I love Allah. I have a good heart. I'm a good person. That claim is not enough. In kuntum tuhibbun Allah, fattabi'uni. The Prophet said, then follow me. Then follow me. What's going to be the result of you following the Prophet? Allah will love you. And He will forgive you of your sins. That's why some of the Salaf used to say, in explaining this ayat, لَيْسَ شَأْنْ تُحِبَّ وَلَكِنَّ شَأْنْ تُحَبَّ. The issue is not that you love. The issue is that you receive love. That you be loved. It's not about you claiming that you love Allah. The real issue is that Allah loves you. And how will that happen? When you follow the Prophet ﷺ. You see, a lot of people think that love is just something that you say. But wallahi, you wouldn't accept that. You wouldn't accept it from your children who say, Daddy, I love you, and then you do everything to disobey. How's that love? How do you show that you love me? How do you show that you appreciate the sacrifices that I made for you, the roof that I put over your head, the things that I did so that you could be educated? How do you show that love? By disobeying me, by doing everything in contradiction to what I've told you to do? But I love you. I really love you. Really? Is that love? It's not love. It's just a statement that's made off the tongue. Love requires action. It is because you love your wife, you love your children, that you get up and you go out and you work and you do something maybe you don't even like to do. You do 30 years of labor. It's something that you don't like to do. You get up every day and do it because you love them. And when you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, You're going to push yourself to do things maybe that you don't actually like. But that if you, bi'idhnillah, are consistent in that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up your heart so that you love the things that He loves, subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you get to that level as a believer. That you love what Allah loves. ومن الناس من يتخذ من دون الله أندادا يحبونهم كحب الله والذين آمنوا أشد حبا لله. But those who believe love Allah more. And that is tawheed. And so the author rahimahullah ta'ala is clarifying for us that essential to your tawheed and your affirmation and negation is that you affirm your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. And that no other part of the creation, nothing else receives that love that you give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Right, this last hadith, which is collected by, the last thing that we're going to cover today, is collected by Imam Muslim. And the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam قال من قال لا إله إلا الله وكفر بما يعبد من دون الله حرم ماله ودمه وحسابه على الله عز وجل. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whoever says La ilaha illallah and rejects everything that is worshipped besides Him, then his wealth and his life will be sacred. Cannot be touched by a Muslim. And his affairs with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here, to sum up what we've covered in this chapter, the Prophet ﷺ explicitly lays out what you are to affirm and what you are to negate if you want to be a true practitioner of tawheed. And this is the explanation of tawheed. Man qala la ilaha illallah, whoever says that there is no true deity except Allah, and he rejects and shuns everything else that is worshipped besides Allah. So we have affirmation and negation. Then he is the Muslim. He is the one whose wealth and life will be held as sacred, and the rest of his affair is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we're to sum up this chapter. If we are to sum up this chapter, which is entitled Tafsir at-Tawheed, wa shahadah an la ilaha illallah, to clarify, to explain at-Tawheed. And the meaning of la ilaha illallah, then it's going to be summed up as follows. And I want you to catch all of this. Number one, that Tawheed must have both affirmation and negation. Number two, that it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's right alone to legislate and to determine halal and haram. That does not mean that a government cannot legislate things. It doesn't mean that they can't put up red lights, for example. When we say, no, I only have to obey Allah. We're talking about determining what is religiously halal and haram. Policies that are made by governments for the betterment of society, as long as those policies are not clearly making something halal that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made haram, or vice versa, then those policies are to be followed. Because Allah azza wa jal made it haram to disobey those who are in charge of our affairs. That is what Allah made haram. So now we can't make it halal to go against them unless they themselves, as the rule states in Islam, that there is no obedience to the creation and disobedience to the Creator. So as long as those policies that are made, we're not going to come and say, no, they are making halal what Allah made haram, or vice versa. The point is that Tawheed requires what? So we come here. That we single out Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the only ilah, right? That is, He has the right to be worshipped alone. That we single Him out as the only Rabb, which in this case, that is that He is the only one that has the right to determine what is halal and haram. That this is from His decree al-qadr. This is what He determines, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like, and the third thing is that our love, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worshipped through love, fear, and hope, that that love has no limit, that the fear and hope does have limits, and that that love is for him subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, that it leads to ikhlas of our worship for him subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, that love as a statement is not accepted by itself, that all love, even the love between creation, has to have some external manifestation of that love. And we'll talk about that later when we get to chapter 31, which is dedicated to that particular ayah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Shalla wa la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. We'll take questions tomorrow.